This lesson, we are going to develop one Spring Boot based CRUD application, and this CRUD operations would be exposed as REST APIs. So stepwise, first we would do the project setup and add the required dependencies. Then we would implement the CRUD operations, create, read, update and delete, and we would develop the necessary code, whether it is repositories, services or controllers. Then we will configure the H2 database, insert sample data, and finally, we'll perform the testing with Postman. Let's get started. Now, we are going to start the implementation of this project using IntelliJ IDEA Community Edition. I have IntelliJ IDEA already opened. And first thing, we are going to set up the project. Regarding project setup, we need to first create a Spring Boot Maven project, and then we need to add certain dependencies. These are starter web, starter data JPA, H2, and starter test. To create the project structure, I'm going to use the Spring Initializer website. Going to browser, search for Spring Initializer, go to this website, start.spring.io. Here, language is Java, project should be Maven. Spring Boot, I can select any version. Let me keep this 3.4.0 as default. Group ID, I'm going to change. Let me make it as org.springboot-test-jpa. Artifact ID, I'm keeping Spring Boot res-jpa. Description, package name, let me change it a little bit. Packaging should be jar. Java, I'm keeping it 17 as I have JDK 17 available in my system. Now we need to add certain dependencies. Typing web, pressing control, Spring Web is added. Type data, got the data JPA. Press control plus click for adding. We need H2 as well, typing H2. So these three are added. Click on generate. Going to the download location, extracting this. Now putting all of this into a specific directory where I keep all my IntelliJ IDEA Java projects. Pasting it, going to the desktop, opening IntelliJ IDEA, clicking on projects, open. This is the project, click OK, maximizing this. Let me open the pom.xml. I'm removing the unnecessary part, this URL and SCM related thing. Java version is 17. I have the starter for GPA, for web, H2 and starter test. As I am using JDK 17, let me check one thing. Going to file, project structure. Under project settings project, I have SDK selected as my JDK. In your case, if it is not selected or if you need to add your own JDK, you can click this drop down and add your JDK from your disk. Canceling this. Now our project setup is ready. Next, we need to start the development for this CRUD operations. First, I'll create one entity class which is product. Then we'll create the associated repository interface, implement a service layer on top of it, and finally, there would be one REST controller which would be exposing all these CRUD methods. And here we would use post, get, put, and delete for this CRUD operations respectively. Expanding the code, close this pom.xml. Here, let me create the packages first. First is for model. Similarly, I would create the other packages. Once the creation is done, I'll resume the recording. So here I have created all the four packages: controller, model, repository, and service. For model, let me create the entity class. And here I'm going to add one small modification in the IntelliJ IDEA settings for import. I'll make change in the setting so that it automatically resolves the import when we are typing any specific library or class or copying pasting any specific code. Let me press Ctrl Alt S, type import. Under this auto import, I'm going to check this to add unambiguous imports on the fly and optimize imports on the fly. Click on apply. Okay. Now let me start with the model creation. Right click, new, Java class, product. Press enter. First, let me add the entity annotation. It should be from jakarta.persistence. Next, I'm going to add the fields first and then the getters and setters. So I have added the fields ID, name, description, price. ID would be the primary key, hence it is annotated with @ID. And for the value generation, its generation type is identity. Next, I'm going to add the getter setters. Go to code, generate, getter and setter, selecting all of them, Ctrl A, click OK. Saving this. Here we need to add two constructors. One is non-argumented constructor, as it is going to be an entity. The ORM framework needs no argument constructor. And also another constructor I would be creating, which would be having all the fields like name, description, and price. This would be used to create product objects and save the data in the database. So let me add the two constructors, the no argumented one and the parameterized one. Added both of the constructors. Next, we are going to create one repository. Repository, press enter. This basically is going to be an interface. Let me correct it, and it is going to extend the JPA repository. Here, I need to add the entity type and the primary key type. So let me add product and the data type, which is long. That's enough for this repository. Next, I'm going to create a service class, which would be using this repository internally. So service should have a service annotation first, and internally it is going to use the repository, the product repository variable. Hence, we need to create one field variable and initialize that using constructor injection. Here I have the repository, and this is getting populated via constructor injection. Next, I'm going to add all CRUD related operations or methods over here, which would in turn make use of this repository for the database operations. Let me add those and then I'll explain. So here I have added multiple CRUD operations. Get all product. Ultimately, it uses the repository and invokes find all. It is returning a list of product. Get product by ID. Here, with the help of an ID, we are returning one product. Save product. It is taking product as parameter and ultimately invoking repository.save so that it gets persisted on the database. Similarly, we have update product where we are getting the ID as well as the product. Here we are setting the ID first and then we are calling the save using the product object that is passed. And finally, we have delete product where based on the ID, we are invoking delete by ID. So the service layer is complete. Now we need to add the product controller. Product controller, press enter. I'm going to add the REST controller annotation first and then the request mapping. This request mapping should be /API/products. And now here, using the service class, we are going to expose different CRUD endpoints. Similar to this product service, as it was using this repository and populating this via constructor injection, we need the service over here. So first we need a variable and then we need to populate it via constructor injection. Let me do that. Added the product service over here and populating it with the constructor injection. Next, I would add all the REST endpoints. Here we have this get all products method. The annotation is get mapping. So in the default invocation of the URL, we are returning the list of the products. We have another get endpoint where we are passing the ID and in turn we are calling the service get product by ID. But there are some scenarios which are handled, as this would return an optional. If the value is available, then we are sending the data as well as the status code as OK, which is 200. If nothing is found, then we are sending not found, which is 404. Apart from this to get mapping, we have post where we are creating product. We are passing the request body with the product details and finally invoking the save product. Similarly, we have put mapping, which is for update. Here the ID is sent and also request body. Based on the ID, first the product is found. If it is not found, we are sending the status code as not found, which is 404. Otherwise, we are updating the product in the backend as well as we are sending the status code as OK. Finally, we have the delete mapping. Here also, based on the ID, first we are checking whether it is at all present in the backend or not. If it is not, 404 or not found would be sent. If it is found, first it would be deleted, then the status code for no content would be sent back. So we have completed the code for model, repository, service, and controller. Now we need to perform the configuration for the H2 in-memory database. So we would add the details for H2 in application properties file. And then we would also enable H2 console for debugging. We would also have auto creation of the tables with JPA that we will discuss later on. Let me go to the resources section. We have the application properties here. Here we have the application name. Let me add the details for all the H2 related configurations. From the beginning, if you see, we are using the in-memory database. Database name is testdb over here, mentioning the driver class, username and password, the dialect to be used, enabling the H2 console, and this is the console path. Now, once the setup for H2 database is done in application.properties, we also need to insert some sample data into the database. As it is an in-memory database, even if we insert some data or make some update, once the application restarts, the database would be refreshed. It won't have any data. So every time we start the application, at least for test purpose, we should be inserting some data. For insertion of sample data, we would be using a simple approach. Here I would use command line runner. It has a run method. This command line runner's run method gets triggered when the Spring application gets started. So once the application gets started, the run method would be triggered, and from the run method we would invoke the repository to save few product records in the database, so that when we perform the test we have some record available within the database. So for data population, let me create another package which is config, and here I'm going to create one class called data initializer. Press enter. This should implement the command line runner, implement the methods, click OK. Here I need the product repository. Let me create the field and populate it. So first I need the field and then the constructor injection. I have the product repository here, and then I'm performing the constructor injection, and using this product repository inside this run method, I'm going to save two product objects into the database. So here inside run, I'm calling the save on the repository, and inside the save, I'm passing this product objects, product 1, product 2, with their description and price. So now coding wise, we are done. We have performed the necessary coding for doing the CRUD operation and also for sample data insertion once the application starts. I'll perform a sample Maven build over here from this Maven tool section, going to lifecycle, clean, package, and skip the test over here. Let me run this Maven build. Build is fine. Now I'm going to run this application. Click on run. Now the application has started. Let me open Postman. In Postman, click on this plus button. I'm going to add this URL, http localhost:8080, then /API, then products. This should list down all the products available within the H2 database. Click on send. Seems there is no product available. Let me check this. I have made one mistake. Ideally, this should be made as one component. That's why this did not get triggered. Saving this, stopping this. Let me perform the Maven build once again. Build completed. Running the application once again. Application started. Going back to Postman. This time it should return me those two products. Sending the request. Now we are getting these two products, product 1 and product 2. If I go back to IntelliJ IDEA and minimize all this, if I go to product controller, I have this get all products, which gives me all products. Then I have this get product by ID. So here, if I go and provide one ID, maybe one, and click on send, it should give me one product. As expected, I am getting one product. Again, if I scroll down here in the controller, I have this post mapping to create a product. So let me create another product by using this Postman. Here it would be a post request. Clicking on this plus icon, this should be post. In the header, I should mention the content type. It should be application JSON. In the body, I have to mention some text. Clicking on raw, its type should be JSON. If it is not selected, you have to manually select JSON. This is the JSON I'm sending. Name as product 3. ID I'm not sending, as the ID would be auto generated. Description, this is product 3. Price 333. I need to enter the URL over here. Let me go here, copy this, paste it over here. Let me remove this ID 1. Click on send. I'm getting the status 200. Okay, this got created. Now whether it actually got created or not, I can check again from here. This was returning me 1. If I remove this, it should return me all the products, and I should get 3 products now. Clicking on send, 1, 2, at the bottom I have 3. Going back to IntelliJ IDEA again, I have this update. Let me do the update over here. The one that I created right now, here using post, I'm going to update this, creating another request. Type is post, copying the URL over here, and here I need to add the ID 3, going to header, content type JSON. In the body, let me copy this, click raw, JSON is selected. Name I'm changing. Here also I'm adding changed, and this one, instead of 333 I'm making it 444. So it's an update I need put actually. This looks okay. This one is also fine. Let me click on send. So this got changed. Status is 200. Okay. Let me go back here into this get and let me check the value of this ID 3. Click on send. We can see the changes made over here. And another small operation is the delete product. Here I can delete it with an ID. Let me go back to Postman. Instead of put, I'm going to change it to delete. And here I'm going to keep it as is. I don't need this body. I can remove it. Click on send. Status is 204, no content. Going back here, instead of 3, let me bring all the products. 3 won't be available anymore. We only have 2 over here. So this way we have created the CRUD operations using Spring Boot, and we have exposed all the CRUD operations as REST endpoints. So from the beginning, what we did, we created a sample Spring Boot project with proper dependencies. We configured the H2 database and also added the code to add the sample data on the application startup, then implemented all the CRUD operations, the REST endpoint, and finally we tested all the operations that we implemented using Postman. In case you found this video useful, I would request you to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you wish. If possible, please add your comment with your feedback or new video idea suggestions. That would be great. Thanks a lot for your time.